go in there. I know. You got a big spoon. How you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you tonight?
Good.
Seeing that it's 6 p.m., we'll call to order the July 25th, 2013 regular board meeting of the Metro Fire Board of Directors. And with that, we'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The opening meeting session is videotaped for cablecast on Metro Cable 14 replay on Saturday, July 27th, 2013 at 1 p.m. and Monday, July 29th, 2013 at 9 p.m. on Channel 14, webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. The open session meetings are also available for viewing on the district's website at www.metrofire.ca.gov. Public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the district's jurisdiction include items on or not on the agenda. And Madam Clerk, do we have any comments?
We have no speakers.
Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second from Director Scheidegger. Who did the second?
I did.
Okay. So, would you call the roll?
Directors Monk,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Scheidegger,
Aye.
Orzali,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Pearson,
Aye.
Gould, Jones, Kelly absent. Motion passes.
Moving on then to our action items. The first action item is the resolution fixing the employment contributions under the Public Employees Medical and Hospital Care Act. Chief Wells.
Tonight before you is a resolution, and quite frankly, this is a cleanup resolution. We've had an issue, the way that our initial 8% healthcare contributions were being taken out of the retirees' checks. The contract that we had, or the resolution in place, had been interpreted different than our intention, and therefore this resolution before you tonight will clarify that. It was also written, as the first one was, by CalPERS, and it's designed initially for our public meeting to be heard, and then it'll be implemented through their process. The collateral consequence of this has been that our HR and finance divisions are collectively gathering this information and making sure the retirees are fully compensated. And then the language will come back before you in September during open enrollment, and that language will be carried forth in January. So one thing for your own understanding of this process is every year we will be coming back before the board in the fall with another CalPERS resolution based on the cap limitations of our 8% cost sharing plan for medical. So tonight, for your consideration, is the attached resolution from CalPERS.
And so, do I have a motion? Any questions or discussion before we move to action?
Just a quick question. You said something about how the money was coming out of their checks and that we're getting back with them and making sure that they were compensated. Do we owe people money that we have to?
Yeah, that's correct, Director. What happened essentially was that in the language that takes effect in January, there's going to be a cap to the third highest plan, and the individuals have to pay the excess of whatever plan they're in and the cap. And that language was interpreted by CalPERS as starting in July for the retirees. And that was not the case, or it wasn't the intent of this board or the negotiations that we had, that it would start in July, the additional above the cap. I mean, everyone's paying the 8% now on whatever plan they're in, but they're not having to pay the difference between the cap and the third highest plan in CalPERS and whatever our cap is. So essentially, yes, there were people, money came out of their check, and we are having to reimburse them, and that's going to, even with this resolution going through our process and the way it works, Rhonda, unfortunately, her shop in finance will be having to pay back this money probably through the end of September. And then it'll get fixed until January.
What is that, do you know the?
It varies per person depending on how much their cap was. This was a CalPERS issue. This was a CalPERS error. This was not a district error, but the district stepped up and is correcting it. We had meetings over the last several days with the retirees. We invited retirees to come. We've talked to them. We are actively gathering how much was taken out and then automatically getting it redistributed to them. So it was not an error that we made. It was an error that they made, but we're fixing it.
And it varied from literally dollars to hundreds of dollars, depending on what plan folks had.
Any other comments? Then do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and approve the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion from Director Monk and a second from Director Wood. Would you call the roll, please?
Directors Monk,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Scheidegger,
Aye.
Barzali,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Pearson.
Aye.
Directors Gould, Jones, and Kelly absent. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Second item, the resolution under FY 2010 State Homeland Security Grants Program, and with a site improvement design costs. Larry Davis.
Directors, Larry Davis, Chief Development Officer. The California Office of Emergency Services administers the state homeland security grants for the state of California, and from time to time they have funds returned to them from subgrantees that are unable to expend the funds within the performance period. And we've identified an opportunity to utilize some of those funds on very short notice. Matter of fact, this was a 20-day turnaround. So the requirements for these funds when we were made aware of them was that we had to spend them within 20 days. So we identified some costs that would meet the requirements and informed them that we could in fact utilize the funds, and have completed a workbook. Workbook's been approved, and we're all ready to go. We have a identification for funding letter from OES for $350,000. So I'm asking for a resolution for approval to expend funds up to $350,000. We have 320 identified right now, but we've got 6 days to look for some additional funds. So we'd like to have a little room in case we identify some additional costs that we can go up to $350,000. Our award letter is for $350,000.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, the early bird catches the worm, or whatever cliche is appropriate. I think the public needs to know what great work this is on the part of our department. It says in here that the Office of the Chief, some staff found that these funds were available. Whoever did that, thank you very much. Thank you and your staff for the fine work in hustling this. I think it's another example of the fine work that Sac Metro does in terms of serving the public and finding available situations like this and taking advantage of it. Thank you very much. I'd like to move the resolution.
I second it.
I have a motion from Director Scheidegger and a second from Director Clark. Would you please call the roll?
Directors Monk,
Aye.
Wood,
Aye.
Scheidegger,
Aye.
Barzali,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Pearson.
Aye.
Directors Gould, Jones, and Kelly absent. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Presentation item. This is a presentation item, report regarding actuarial valuations of other post-employment benefits programs. And we have a Ms. Farland.
Yes,
McFarland, excuse me.
Rhonda McFarland, Chief Financial Officer. I want to introduce our actuary, Catherine McLeod. She prepared our valuation for our other post-employment benefits. She also advised us during the negotiation process, and this is our first opportunity to see the great benefit it had on our liability for other post-employment benefits. Catherine is well-versed with CalPERS Health, which was extremely helpful to us. She's been an actuary for more than 30 years and has been with Bickmore, her firm, for 6 years, and we've been working with them for about the last year and a half, and I will turn it over to Catherine.
Thank you. Good evening, directors. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. As I'm bringing up this presentation, is it showing up on your, there we go, let me get it. Sarah, you might help me here to see if I get it full screen.
It's kind of hard to see. There's just a little.
Thank you. Yes. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. My comments, there are not a lot of numbers in here, but I know the numbers are really of interest. So they're all in the report, which I know you have as well. And please stop me along the way if you have any specific questions. I may respond and say, I think that's coming up shortly, so if you don't mind, I defer that. But if when we get to that point, or you feel like I've gotten to that point, if I haven't answered your question, please speak up again, and I'll try it again. Okay. Hopefully it's not going to jump again because I just clicked twice. Just for a quick overview, at the time we prepared the valuation, in July 1, 2002, there were roughly the same number of retirees and active employees, which is not terribly common. So this is an organization that has quite a lot of retirees in force, equal roughly to the active employees. And so with these numbers, it's easy to see that lifetime retiree medical is considered a valuable benefit, and it's also obviously a significant expense. So it's worth the time being spent. During this past year, as alluded to already, the district has taken 2 very meaningful actions, both of which substantially reduced, or in combination reduced, the OPEB liability. The first is that retiree medical benefits themselves have been reduced and or controlled. Specifically for pre-Medicare retirees, as we just heard, they now contribute at least 8% of their medical premiums. And beginning this coming January, to the extent that they've chosen a plan of coverage that's more expensive than the maximum plan the district will support, then they must pay everything over that 8% of that maximum plan. If you're for post-Medicare retirees, they have 100% of their premium paid, but only up to a maximum plan. Again, the same maximum plan. So if a more expensive coverage is selected, the retiree would pay the difference. Again, coming January. The second important step was that the district established an irrevocable OPEB trust and is moving toward, this year, contributing 100% of the annual required contribution each year. And that step of contributing not only improves the benefit security, but it also allows the district to earn substantially more on the dollars set aside. So you could take those same reserve dollars, and I know to some extent that some dollars were being set aside, but you're only going to earn what the district would earn on its local agency funds, and that's nowhere close to what it would be earning in CalPERS Trust. So those 2 things, the pre-funding process helps not just set aside money, but it makes every dollar you set aside work more for you. So those were both very important steps. Just a quick overview. This is just because I know this stuff only comes at you once every couple of years, just to give you a quick visual of expense recognition before GASB 45 and expense recognition after GASB 45. I boiled it down to something I think is pretty simple. Before GASB 45, if you had a retiree, you didn't recognize the cost of the benefit until the years that they retired, and during retirement, which I've highlighted here as the golden years, just whatever was paid in that year would be the expense that would be recognized. And after GASB 45 was implemented, everything shifts, and the goal is to recognize the entire expense of retiree medical costs during the years when the employees are working. So there's a dramatic shift from the future to the past in terms of those liabilities. This slide is meant to just give you these are not real numbers for the district, but they're sort of in the ballpark. This is just meant to give you a quick overview of in the years since GASB 45 has been in existence, the district has not yet been pre-funding or setting aside all of the money of that annual expense that has been calculated. So for example, to give you a sense of what's been going on these past 3 or 4 years, an expense of roughly $15 million might have been in the ballpark, towards which contributions, payments for retirees were made. So you had an expense in the year minus some contributions in the year, with a shortfall of roughly $10 million in this example. That $10 million is referred to as the net OPEB obligation, the difference between the current year's expense and the current year's OPEB contributions. So the next year comes along and there's another expense. I said $15 million. Again, another $5 million contributed. At the end of the year 2, you're up to $20 million net OPEB obligation. And year 3 and so on, you can see how that just starts to grow and grow and grow. And this is the situation that would have been perpetuated if the district had not stepped up and initiated this pre-funding policy change. So, big picture, what are we valuing? We're valuing the projected cost of future retiree medical benefits. And when you're valuing those for current retirees and their dependents, we're also valuing them for current active employees when they retire. So there's no cost for active employees while they're working, but we're projecting their retirement and we're projecting the cost of those benefits when they retire. We are not valuing anything for future employees who have not yet been hired. Those people will be accounted for if and when they're hired. Their cost allocation, remember, under the new GASB 45, starts from the day they're hired, and their funding is assumed to end at the time they retire. So they haven't been hired yet. Okay. Just a quick overview, comparison of the prior benefit and the new benefit, just so you can see the change or the reductions that were agreed to. It was a lot of participation in the process, as you know. The prior benefit was essentially 100% of coverage for any coverage level. So 100% of the medical premium for retiree, their spouse, and dependents, up to what was a family rate. So if you had a single retiree or retiree covering just his spouse, they could elect more expensive coverage, particularly after Medicare. And in fact, the data supported the fact that that was happening in practice because the maximum was something like $1,800 a month or something. So if somebody was single, they could shift from a less expensive plan pre-Medicare to a more expensive plan because they had the budget themselves to do that. So the change in the benefit not only implemented an 8% cost sharing for any plan for pre-Medicare, and that makes everyone a better shopper. I think Chief Wells indicated to me that they've already seen some experience where retirees, just because of that copay, are starting to see some shift to less expensive plans. So there's not only a copay there, but there's also a maximum plan. So the third highest rate plan in the Bay Area, which is currently Blue Shield Net Value, is the maximum for which the district will pay. So if someone chooses a plan more expensive than that, the retiree pays the difference. And that cap is set now not as a family cap, but by coverage level. So if you have a single retiree, they will pay 8% of their premium. And if they choose a plan that's more expensive than Blue Shield Net Value single coverage, then they pay the difference. So there's no longer a big budget, a family budget to work under. Everyone is expected to contribute at least 8% of pay up to that plan for whatever coverage level they choose. And post-Medicare, as I alluded to, 100% of the premium up to that same cap plan. There is there's a handful of retirees that have come in from prior districts that have merged in. I didn't talk about their benefits here. There's not very many of them. And also there are newer employees hired after December 2011 that are covered by a different formula called the PEMCA vesting formula. There are not that many of them yet, and the impact on this valuation is small enough. You can see between December 2011 and July 2012, there wasn't a lot of hiring during that period. So I'm not going to spend much time talking about that. That'll have a bigger impact next time. Okay, in terms of developing the projected benefit, now we know what we're valuing and we know how we're going to allocate the cost. How do we project the cost? So we look at things like, what is the probability that this employee will retire from the district? They may terminate and leave. And unlike pension benefits, where there's an accrual and there's an eventual vested benefit paid, If the employee does not actually retire from the district, that benefit goes away. So we want to look at the possibility that someone will terminate or even pass away prior to retirement. If they do retire, what age are they likely to retire? Will it be a service or disability retirement? If they get to retirement, will they choose to continue the coverage? Well, in your case, the benefit is very generous. Even with these changes, it's a very generous benefit. Yes, we're assuming they're going to choose the coverage. But if so, what plan will they choose? Will they choose one of the more expensive ones where they have a copay? Will they choose something less expensive than the cap to minimize their copay? Those kinds of assumptions come into play as well. Will they cover a spouse? Will they have dependent children? And if so, for how long? So we take all those into consideration. How much will medical costs increase in the future? So we have to consider what we think the trend on healthcare expenses will be. And then eventually, how long will this employee live in retirement? And these assumptions are outlined in our report in Table 4, and that begins on page 20. So if there's any specific questions along the line, let me know. When we take that process of forming those assumptions and looking at the benefits for each person, and we collect them all, we do this as a completely individual process. So we look at each employee, what their current age is, years of service, whether they're a safety employee or miscellaneous employee, what retirement formula they're covered under. For each individual employee, we project into the future the likelihood. We look at their spouse coverage, current dependent coverage, et cetera, and we project individually the present value of their projected benefits individually. And when we collect all of that together for the entire population of the district, actives and retirees, we call that collectively the actual present value of projected benefits. So that's the big chunk of what we calculate and the most meaningful number. And then the rest of this is about what we do with that to develop the annual accounting expense. So as we all know, time is money. So one of the important concepts in this is those words present value of, so actuarial present value of projected benefits is important. The present value itself varies based on how much the district is expected to earn on its funds between today and when benefits are eventually paid. And so this is an important step in where that decision to pre-fund those OPEB liabilities comes in, because we've calculated the stream of future payments, we think, based on all our probabilities and assumptions. But what that's worth today varies based on how much you think each dollar you're going to set aside is going to earn between now and the date all of those benefits are paid. So moving from district-held funds or paying out of operating revenue and changing that to setting it aside in an irrevocable trust that has assumed return, assumed return of 7.25% in this valuation changes the nature of that expectation substantially, and that led to a dramatic drop in the value of the liability. I apologize for these numbers being small, but that's what actuaries do. I mentioned we assumed a 7.25% expected long-term rate of return. This is commensurate with the CalPERS strategy, asset allocation strategy that was selected by the district for investment of its funds. The expected return in terms of 50-50 return is 7.61%. So I think the district, another area where it was very prudent was to not assume that allowable discount rate of 7.61%, but to back it off by some margin, what's referred to as a margin for adverse deviation. So assuming that returns are less than expected, you've got this margin in here so that over the long term, if things do fall short a little bit, you've got that margin already anticipated. So based on a 7.25% return, what this screen does, or this slide does, is say we've calculated the present value of projected benefits for everyone. Now it's our job, now it's the actuary's job to allocate that present value over the working careers of the employees and retirees. And so we allocate that to past years worked, the current year worked, and some of it's going to be allocated to the future year. So the portion of costs, OPEB costs, that have been allocated to years of service that have already been worked is referred to as the actuarial accrued liability. And in the district's case, when we prepared the valuation, we came up with a value just under $145 million past service cost. That would represent all of the liability for the current retirees because they're done working for you, so all of their liability is now allocated to past years. And it includes a portion of the cost expected for active employees because they've worked for you for some period of time. On average, I believe the district's active employees are roughly age 44 and have worked for you for about 15 years. So they're a good way through their career, but they're not all the way there. So that the portion of their service that's been allocated to the past, plus all the retirees, is in that $145 million number. Then we allocate a piece of that cost for each future year. The piece we allocate to this year, we call the normal cost. So that's for 3.3 million or so. Then the remaining difference, we're going to allocate one piece in each remaining future year for your active employees, and that's roughly 23 million. So the sum of all those things add up to the total present value, projected value of those benefits of 171 million or so. Okay? Let's take a look. Yes?
I heard what you said about the 7.25 from CalPERS, but in fact, for like the last 5 years or so, it's been less than that, hasn't it? And I guess, how do we, what period do they base the 7.25 upon to reach that projection?
To be honest, this is, in developing their 7.61% discount rate, that's a process that our firm is not involved in at all. Obviously, CalPERS investment folks and their actuaries are involved in doing that analysis and projecting. It's very careful, very detailed analysis, but they're essentially looking at the expected returns they're going to get from their portfolio and how aggressively or moderately or balanced it may be. Overall, the CalPERS retirement plan fund has returned less in the last 5 years, but it's been a while since I've looked at it. It's been 6 months or so since I've looked at it. But it's my recollection that over the past 20 years, the CalPERS retirement plan has earned an average of 7.8%.
Okay.
Compounded per year over the last 20 years. It's been a while, so I don't want to be taken as gospel on that. The CERBT, the OPEB trust itself, has only been in existence since, I believe, 2008. So it's a pretty new fund. So it's just now getting its 5-year history. And the first year, of course, it was terrible. I think for the first 6 months it was great, and then the bottom fell out. It was terrible. But I think overall their net return has been very good. They weathered the storm better than the retirement side did because they were not heavily invested in real estate and other things. So they had 1.5 bad years, but most people that invested even back in 2008 have seen net positive returns, I think, in the ballpark of 5%. So those investing later, like the district, who just invested this year, Ron has got more details on that, but I think it's roughly 9% so far for your turn this year.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's just conceptually, let's suppose, GASB 45 has only been around for, affecting the district for the last 4 years or so. But let's just suppose that the theory of this from the actuary's perspective is that we're calculating that cost as if it's always been around. So we've allocated all the cost, the past cost, to this actuarial accrued liability. Well, what if your assets were 144? What if you actually had assets? You'd been funding this all along since the very first time you ever promised a retiree medical benefit. What if you had been setting money aside? In theory, you would have assets equal to the liability so far. And so for an annual costing, there'd be nothing to pay for the past. You'd be right on track. You would have a normal cost, meaning that's the cost allocation we're developing for the current year for your active employees. That's this roughly $3.3 million. And you don't have to worry about the future costs until they come next year and the year after that. So in theory, your long-term OPEB cost, when you pay off the debt for the past, is $3.3 million, plus some interest. Every time you move these dollars around in time, we have to throw a little bit of interest in. But that's not the situation. Obviously, you don't have $145,000 in assets. So we look at the flip side and say, okay, starting this year, July 1, 2012, there were no assets in the plan yet. So if there are no assets in the plan, in addition to covering the current year's cost allocation, you need to make a payment to pay off that unfunded amount from the past. So we amortize that. The period of time was kind of reset or fresh started back to 30 years, commensurate with the establishment of the OPEB trust to sort of start everything together. So a 30-year amortization payment on that $145 million past service liability is just under $8 million. So your annual required contribution during these years while you're paying off the past is that $8 million or so plus the $3.3 million interest adjustment. It comes out to $12 million roughly. And those numbers can be seen in the executive summary of the report and also are developed in detail in Table 1B on page 12. So every year, now this is the process that we would go through. Now next year, when we develop the numbers for next year, if we were to look on page 12, we would see for the fiscal year ending 2014 that there's assets in there now. So now there's some accrued liability. The accrued liability is a little bit bigger, but we now have some assets against that. And each year the assets will grow and grow and gradually offset. And the goal is then to look like the slide before, where the assets equal the liabilities. I'm going to skip this one. This is a detail. If people want to know how we do it for individuals, I'm assuming nobody does. But if you do, it's there for our discussion. So let's now take a look at how things looked a year ago when we did the valuation and how things look now today. When we did the 2011 valuation, there was no pre-funding going on, or just a very small amount of contributions going on. So the discount rate for that was, perhaps more favorable than it should have been at 4.5%. But, that the economy was transitioning. People used to use that 5% long-term rate of return for things that were unfunded. And now that the market has changed substantially, people are scratching their heads and wondering if they'll ever get 2% again in their local funds. So 4.5% was kind of happening during those transition years. So the discount rate now, with the investment in the CalPERS Trust and the assumption that the district will continue to contribute that annual contribution every year, has now been increased to 7.25%. And we can see that despite the fact that there's been a slight increase in the population from 1,100 to 1,161, a good number of which are retirees, by the way, we can see that the liability has dropped from roughly $226 million down to $145 million. So roughly $81 million decrease in the accrued liability. And that is predominantly due to the changes we've talked about. In fact, so changing from the pay-as-you-go basis to a pre-funding basis, and by changing the retiree benefits. This specifically in numbers breaks out that $81 million savings. Roughly $19 million of that was from decreasing the benefits themselves. And we were not able to anticipate, because the open enrollment cycle had already been completed for 2013 when we were doing the analysis, there wasn't time for retirees and employees to change their plan from whatever plan they were in now to something perhaps less expensive. But it's anticipated that some employees are going to shift to a less expensive plan because they're now paying 8%. And so those changes will hopefully even reduce the cost a little bit more next year. So $19 million from that, we did increase the cost somewhat from an assumption change. We recognize that employees are living longer and longer. It seems to be continuing, so we've projected improvements in the length of life expectancy, and that actually increased the cost. But then all of those things were offset even more by this assumed increase in return, which lowered the liability by about $66 million. So those three things collectively led to the $81 million difference. And then taking a look at the annual contribution requirements for the last 3 years, 2012, 13, and 14. In 2012, you can see the impact that the annual required contribution, roughly $16.6 million. Of that, the district contributed $6 million in retiree payments. So in that early slide, when I showed expense 16 or 15 minus 5 contributed, 10 fell to the bottom line, that's exactly the situation here. So an expense of 16 minus 6 contributed, so you added $10 million of unfunded expense to the bottom line last year. In the current year, because of the benefit changes, fiscal year ending 2013, and the initiation of the funding, the annual required contribution dropped by roughly $4.5 million down to 12. That number we just saw before, $12 million. Again, the district did not fully contribute that amount this year, but they're moving that direction. So they contributed a total of roughly 8.5, so a lot closer. And then for fiscal year ending 2014, it's anticipated that the full annual required contribution will be contributed. And then the tide will turn, and gradually that unfunded obligation on your books will gradually erode away and come back down to zero. That's it. The yes didn't get attached to the question, but are there any questions?
Questions from the board? Thank you so much for the presentation.
I'm going to leave it to Sarah to see if she can help me get it off there. Just to take it off the, yeah. Thank you.
So moving along, and if I might take just a moment to, again, congratulate the district on having the foresight to go into pre-funding for OPEB. This is critically important stuff, and I solidly support doing that. So the President's report, seeing that the President's not here, we can move forward through that. Chief's report, Chief Henke.
Board of Directors, first off, I'd very, very proud last Friday for Metro as an organization. Our Finance Director, Chief Financial Officer Rhonda McFarland, received the Finance Officer of the Year Award from the Business Journal for large municipality and large nonprofit organizations. And so a lot of the finance staff and myself attended the Business Journal. There was probably about 300 or 400 people in attendance, from large public sector to small public sector to nonprofits to private corporations to who's who in the finance world. And it was exciting because I was probably the worst math person in the room. But Rhonda had some stiff competition. She was amongst, I think, 20 or 22 finalists that were all celebrated that they were finalists. But in the category, Chief Financial Officer of the Year, for the category I mentioned, large municipality and large nonprofit, she was successful and won that award. And I think that's a testament to Rhonda as a manager, as a Chief Financial Officer, as a person, and her professional development. And I also say that that's a testament to the staff that she has. And really, Rhonda would tell you herself, and she did when she got up there, it really was a team award, as she told all the people there when she got up and gave her speech, which she did a great job on. And it really is her finance team that's just done a tremendous job out there in changing and turning this district around. And I got to tell you, I was pretty proud when you looked at the movers and shakers that were there in attendance. It certainly doesn't help our district, who has come through some extremely interesting times over the last 10 years or so, to finally achieve that type of success in our financial arena. So I just wanted to acknowledge her tonight and thank her so much for her hard work. And no, she's not getting any more staff. I always do that to her. But just did a, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you could not be prouder to sit there and see that happen, and it was great. It was a really, really great day. And it was actually a good lunch, and it was good to have the group of finance people there, so we all got to sit around and visit, and it was a just tremendous opportunity. Other things that have happened, we continue with my dealings with Cal Metro Chiefs, Cal Chiefs meetings. We are following the EMS issues statewide. They appear to have spread from the Sacramento region to the southern part of California, and now other fire agencies are starting to be affected by the state of California and their aggressive attitude towards fire agencies providing pre-hospital care and ambulance transport. So we continue to stay up on top of that. We did our bi-monthly WebEx meetings with all the personnel in the department. And I thought that was very successful. Again, we talked about the SAC Business Journal. On the 23rd and 24th of this week, we had the retiree healthcare question and answer forum. It went from 9 to 11 each day, and we invited retirees to come in, and we had a good turnout. A couple of them in there said that they had retired in 1981. Year I graduated from high school, and they looked pretty good. They asked some great questions, and I think more importantly, they were all very, very supportive of the program that you, the Board of Directors, and 522 put together in regards to pre-funding. They understood how important that was, and a lot of them came up and just were ecstatic that we actually put that program into place. So I thought that was a nice thing to see, the retirees, that some of them have been gone for 30 years plus, and there's not a lot of those around because most of them don't, unfortunately, live that long, but come up and say, hey, we really appreciate the hard work that went into that. Upcoming meetings and events, the 26th, I believe Saturday, is the Guns N' Hoses 2013 Food, Wine, and Brew Festival at the Red Lion Hotel Woodlake at 6:30 p.m. Then on the 27th, we have the State Fair Firefighter Cooking Challenge. If our team, our championship team that's won 2 Golden Bears in a row, is successful, they will then compete on Sunday. I don't have the times for that. I'll make sure that Brenda Briggs gets it out, but they will compete on Sunday for the 3rd Golden Bear in a row. As I've noted in the past, the local agencies around us quit and are not competing, so they're shipping 2 Southern California fire agencies are now in the running. It is the California State Fair. And so we're going to have some competition from the southern part of California, and we'll see how that goes. But we're very hopeful. It's a great event, and I urge people to be there. On August 3rd, Sacramento Metro Fire Association will have their annual Music in the Park, Gibson Ranch Park, Alberta, 10 a.m. till whenever. Also save the date for the 12th of August. We have our promotion ceremony right here at Rancho City Hall, 5:30, social hour at 7 o'clock. New hires effective 7/1/13. We have Chief Pilot Monty Van Landingham, who has been hired as our Chief Pilot to run our air program. I think he's probably a little busy right now in the city of Sacramento since they seem to have a little incident running there. And reinstatements, none to report. Reassignments, none to report. Retirements, none to report. Promotions, effective 7/15, accounting specialist Matt Davies was promoted, and he'll be in the purchasing and logs division. Recruitment, accounting technician, internal, external applications were due the 26th at 5 p.m. And office technician, internal, external applications are due on August 5th at 5 p.m. And last but not least, what I'd like to say is we are on the wind down to our gracious host, Rancho Cordova, for having us here, who would really like us to leave. We are moving very quickly. The boardroom already has the dais installed. The simulator has carpet being laid down, and we are, I'm told, we probably will be moving in and having our first board meeting the second week of September. Is that correct, Chief Cockrum? Second week of September, we will be back at Metro Fire Headquarters with all the tenant improvements completed. To date, I'm proud to say Roeblen Management and the trade unions that they have working out there are 2 weeks ahead of schedule and about $60,000 under budget. So the project has gone extremely well, and we take our hats off to Roeblen. They've done a great job, and Scott and his staff for managing the project, and we are very excited about getting you folks in there. If you just want to have the whole surprise at once, don't come by administration for the next 6 weeks. But if you do want to come by and walk through and see what they're doing, you're more than welcome to, and would open it up. You will have to wear a hard hat. The only person that doesn't wear one is me, because I can't be hurt if it falls on my head. So with that, that concludes my report for this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Next is operations.
Good evening, Director. Scott Cockrum, Deputy Chief of Support Services. I'm in for Chief Holbrook. Chief Holbrook ran down to a fire that's occurring on the American River, kind of west of Northgate. About 40 units on scene right now, and I think I've counted about 18 of them as Metro Fire units. So when we get a large incident like that, we like to have our own staff down there making sure that our guys are safe. So I'm going to go ahead and go through his report for him. Metro Fire ran 2,377 transports, dispatches, and transport is 71.3% of the time. AMR, 24 dispatches, and transported 62.5% of the time. Since our last meeting, which was on July 11th, the Metro Fire has run 11 structure fires. And I'll go through the list that we have here. On July 23rd, we had a kitchen fire in Rancho Cordova. An search determined that no civilians were in the home. A dog was found and removed unharmed. This was a big one in the news, and we got Investigator Barsdale here for us today. If we have any questions on this incident, but on the 22nd, we had a house fire on French Road, which is in the South Sacramento area. We had two victims were found deceased in the home. The fire was brought under control within 30 minutes, and Metro Fire investigators processed the scene. Later, through a multi-jurisdictional investigation, there was a man that was suspected of killing the two victims prior to the fire. Was found deceased in Huntington Beach, California. So it was an interesting incident. The young man that was related to the two was carjacked the vehicle. I think it was in Manteca. Is that correct, John? Merced. Carjacked the vehicle in Merced at gunpoint from another guy. Drove to Huntington Beach, and it's still unclear, but he ended up killing himself and another fella down in Huntington Beach. It's unsure what that relationship was. So interesting call here in Sacramento. On the 21st, we had a duplex fire with reports of children trapped. After a thorough search, it was confirmed that all occupants had escaped and were safe. Aggressive firefighter prevented the spread of fire from reaching the other half of the duplex. On the 19th, a wind-driven fire threatened homes in the Jackson and Excelsior Road area. It took 45 firefighters approximately 90 minutes to bring this fire into control. On the 17th, an unattended candle sparked a garage fire at Edison, on Edison Avenue. Firefighters were able to prevent the fire from reaching the rest of the house and adjoining houses, saving approximately $100,000, but losing the garage and all their personal property contained in it. On the 12th, a discarded cigarette led to a grass and fence fire threatening homes in the Fair Oaks area. Crews arrived and found the fire started near the street, but it moved to the backyard of two homes with some trees involved. Quick action resulted in both homes being spared from damage. And on the 11th, an arson fire resulted in damage to two townhomes in North Highlands. Crews arrived to a working structure fire in one of the townhomes that contained 3 units. At the close of the incident, at least one homeowner was displaced. Red Cross was called to assist. And on the 11th, a garage fire in Rancho Cordova caused power lines to fall on multiple homes. So that concludes his report. Any questions?
I'd just like to add one thing. Chief Cockrum, Chief Wagner, Chief, the battalion chief, wasn't he down?
Larry Savage.
Larry Savage. They, all 3 of them and some of our other various personnel were on the overhead team that managed the mountain fire that was right above Palm Springs to the east or the west of Palm Springs. And they've been down there for how many days? 8 days. They just returned last night and this morning. So wanted to acknowledge that in those fires that took off in the south, we had personnel down there on the actual emergency overhead teams managing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We have no report from, Larry?
Sorry, sir. Go ahead and finish I just wanted to get back up to the podium if I could at the end.
Absolutely, we could, since we have no report from General Counsel, we could do that now if you'd like.
Larry looks like a good general counsel.
He looks like General
Yes, John
Counsel to
shouldn't
me.
have taken vacation.
Again, Director Larry Davis, Chief Development Officer. And I should have brought this up at the time I made the presentation, and I don't know how procedurally this works, but like I said, with the 20-day grant, there have been some things moving very fast. As you can see, we got the award letter from Cal OES on Friday. On Monday, around noon, they called and asked if we could replace the state Homeland Security money with Metropolitan Medical Response System funding. Pretty much the same requirements. There's nothing that would change the requirements of the grant by changing the funding source. It's still covered in the resolution. At the very end, it says Homeland Security Grant Program. So that would legally cover the program that the Metropolitan Medical Response System funding is in. Okay, trying to keep this as straightforward as possible. As late earlier this afternoon, they couldn't tell me whether that was going to be SHISHGAP money or MMRS money, the Metropolitan Medical Response money. I also told them that I had already, the board packet had already gone out, but they had asked if, we could keep it open for some flexibility. So on the off chance that all I needed to do was mention that at the board meeting to make this procedurally correct, I didn't want to have the meeting closed without having that opportunity. So this may be a moot point, or I just wanted to procedurally make sure that you were informed that this may be a different source of money within the same grant program. That make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Anything else that you need from us, Larry?
That's it. Thank
All
you.
right. We have a representative of Local 522.
Good evening, Ty Bailey, 522. I only have one thing to go over tonight, just so you're all aware. We had our 3-year bids recently. I encourage all of you to go out to the stations. The first week of August, you're going to have new crews moving around the department to their new stations, which every 3 years, as you're aware, we have our bids. So that's the only thing I have to report tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. Committee and delegate reports. Since Director Kelly's not here, we'll move on to the Communication Center JPA. Chief Cockrum.
Sorry. We have another house fire, so busy day out there for our crews. So fully involved house fire in North Highlands there that Chief is listening to there. We had a board meeting today for the Communications Center. We honored a longtime employee, some of you know, but as Glenn Swarner is retiring after 34 years on August 1st. So congratulations to him. Some of the statistics that we got today that might be interesting to the board here is in the 2012-13 fiscal year, the Communications Center received 143,041 911 calls, 82,073 emergency calls that came in by dialing the 7-digit emergency number. I don't even know what that is, so it's kind of an interesting number that over 82,000 people use that number. So they processed over 225,000 emergency calls for service in 1 year. And then with all of the phone calls that they've received, ingoing and outgoing calls, they processed over almost 376,000 calls in a 1 year period of time. So that's a lot of phone calls going around in there. They dispatched 167,880 calls, with 81.06% of those being emergency medical response calls. They have a rule in the NFPA standards that they need to be able to answer the call greater than 95% of the time within 10 seconds. So they meet that standard at 96.33% of the time at under 10 seconds. And with only about, and then with another 981 calls with under 15 seconds. So their standards are pretty well made, and they're pretty speedy and they're pretty efficient. But that concludes my report for them. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Chief, you mentioned a 7-digit emergency number. This is a number obviously other than 911. What do we know about that? I know you said you didn't know what the number was, but how does that work?
Yeah, prior to the 911 days, they had, everybody would get a sticker for their phone, and you would have a 7-digit emergency number that you would call that would go into the system over there. For as long as most of us have been around, for 20 or 30 years, the 911 system has been in place. So I found that to be pretty interesting, that people were actually using the 7-digit phone number to get emergency services.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
The good news, the interesting part is that when you don't dial 911, when you dial 911, it goes either to the sheriff or to the highway patrol, and then it gets transferred back, because we're not the PSAT they call, so we get the secondary call, it gets transferred to us. So by calling the 7-digit number, you get right into the communications center and it gets dispatched. So it's kind of an interesting, over 80,000 calls.
So it raises the question, if it were a fire that someone were reporting, having that 7-digit number would get them into the system more directly?
Well, and if you have a law enforcement problem and you call that 7-digit, it messes up your time frame because now it's got to be transferred over to law enforcement. So,
I see.
yeah, we would encourage people to use the 911 system as it's designed, but it's interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I do know, being involved in Little League with Chief Jenkins, that 7-digit number is given out to managers and coaches so that if there's an emergency from the cell phone perspective, we get into fire dispatch, medical dispatch quicker than that end around. So
Well, it
I
does
don't know
make
how many
sense.
Little Leagues use it, but I know at least Folsom does.
At least 80,000 plus people out there. So that's, it is an interesting statistic. That's why I brought it forward today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
Other
you.
questions? Moving along to the California Fire and Rescue Training JPA, Director Kelly's not available, so we will move to the Finance Committee with Director Scheidegger.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. The next exciting chapter in the annals of the Finance Committee will occur on August 8th, when our next meeting at 5 o'clock. We'll invite you all to be there. Thank you.
And moving then to the Policy Committee with Director Pearson.
We met today, and we'll be forwarding you a policy that we reviewed today on a minimum and maximum fund balances. And then outside of that, we have no other further meetings planned.
Okay. Then moving into, we have no closed session item this evening? No. Okay, so then we can move into closing comments from the directors. And so we can start with Director Monk.
I've said it already, but I'll say it again. I want to thank Rhonda and her staff for all the hard work that they've done on producing the reserve policy and the reserve fund balance minimums, maximums, et cetera. There's a lot of work that went into that in a short period of time. And albeit the recommendation of the auditor as one of the things we need to do, they jumped on it and were able to prepare the draft for us and everything. And it was a lot of hard work, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Director Wood.
I just want to say to the chief and Brenda Briggs, who's not here tonight, Leslie Miller, and all of the volunteers who spent their time with Fire Camp last week, appreciate that time. I was at the competition on Friday, and no matter what place the kids ended up, all of them had a smile on their face. It was a great time for everyone. And also a thanks to 522, Ty's gone, but want to make sure that 522 is recognized for the support that they give to that every year, as well as Sunsplash and Roseville Fire Department for the use of their facilities. And also, Chief, it's great to see whoever, not say whoever, I can't remember her name, Captain Idem, the Public Information Officer, doing a great job. Last week, KCRA had a really good, clear feature showing the helicopter in use over here at the Jackson fire, and it's good for the people to see, the public to see that that is a very valuable and necessary resource that we have. So thank you for that effort.
Thank you. Director Scheidegger.
Thank you. I want to make sure that we, again, extend congratulations to Rhonda on her recognition. Her getting the award is well-deserved, and her staff certainly played a major role in the improvements that have been made and her recognition. And I hope the public recognizes the changes that are occurring in this department, largely as a result of her efforts, and I'm glad that you were recognized. Congratulations. Also, again, Larry, I think it's wonderful that you guys saw that worm laying out there and went and got that money. It's another excellent example of the hustle this department puts forth on behalf of the public. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Director Pearson.
Yeah, again, wanted to thank Rhonda and her staff. When it first came to the district, you know, the finances were a tough handle to get a hold of, and it was embarrassing as a director at times when people would ask you where the money was going, and we didn't know, and now we do. And that's a nice feeling to have, because as a taxpayer too, I want to know where my taxes are going, and that's a big part of this. So I appreciate your effort and your staff effort in that. And then Larry Davis with your connections and like you say, finding that money, that was excellent, excellent job on that. So that's pretty much what all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to I echo the words of our other directors in thanking you and congratulating you and your crew on the award. I would also like to, and that's a very prestigious award. We're very lucky at Metro Fire to have a person of your caliber heading up our finance department. I'd also like to nominate Larry Davis for Hustler of the Year, Grand Hustler of the Year, because he's doing a fine job, and we really appreciate it. And lastly, I'd like to thank the men and women of 522 and our staff. And I would like to thank the guys out there in that 100-degree weather right now, battling that grass fire over in the American River. It's tough enough when you're not wearing that gear and you're just walking around out there. It's hot as heck out there, and we really appreciate the efforts and the fine job that our personnel do in protecting our district. And I'm looking also lastly, I'm looking forward to having our own boardroom, and that's all I have to say, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to echo the comments of the other directors in thanking Ms. McFarland for her efforts and congratulate her on this award. These things may seem to the public to be perfunctory, but they are not. First of all, it's a very prestigious award, difficult to achieve, and carries with it a very significant message to other areas and to other political arenas about the caliber and quality of the work being done at SAC Metro. So again, my congratulations. I also want to thank Citrus Heights Councilwoman Sue Frost for her call today, asking for further information about the simulation center that we're working to bring online. I very much appreciated her taking the time to come out and meet with the chief and I, and her continued interest in developing the project. So my appreciations to her. And so that closes my comments. Any other items that need to be taken care of on the part of the board? Then with that, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
So we are adjourned. Thank you.